Hello friends, I made this for. My name is Lauren, and this is a channel where I talk all things astrology using the tarot as the tool to look through and reflect upon. Today we're specifically going to be using the Golden Art Nouveau tarot. I got a large size after using the mini size at my wedding. Everybody's seat had a tarot card, which some people were not huge fans of. Some people were. Totally fine either way. But yeah, if you've been here before, welcome back. You already know the dealio. Please make sure to check out the links down below if you want to support your friend, me. And if you've never been here before, I'm really glad you came, because today is the third installment of the Pluto return. Now, I'm going to take a little breather break after this, and as we get more into the Pluto return of the United States, I'll go over more videos, but this and the first two are really just to get you set up in understanding some of the basic concepts. So what we're going to be using here today is, of course, this lovely Golden Art Nouveau tarot. And we're going to be looking at not only Judgment, which is the card for Pluto. Today, we are talking about Capricorn, because in my last video, we talked about Pluto being in the natal Pluto for the United States being in the second house. Today we're going to talk about the sign that this planet is in, and that planet is Capricorn. So we'll be looking at Capricorn through the tarot as the devil. And I'm just making sure all my lights are on. I'm so illuminated. Give me a ring light and some TikTok. Anyway, if you want to follow me on Instagram or TikTok at @SomeNormalChild, if you want to give me some money just because I'm cute and I work really hard, my Venmo is also @SomeNormalChild. Feel free to send a donation. Just kidding. You don't have to do anything except love yourself. I am also going to just lightly touch on the Lover's card, because I think there's an interesting pattern. Before we get into this deck, this is a pretty classic deck. This is not very far off of the Smith-Waite interpretation. It's very much almost an exact replica of that, but a little bit more dynamic with the imagery, I think, personally. I went to art school. I can use words like dynamic and color theory and whatever. So let's talk about it. Let's start by just pulling out our Judgment card, which looks like this in this tarot. Very classic depiction, right? All the people coming out of their coffins, coming back to life. The difference in this interpretation, instead of blue bodies, they are gray. They are grayed out, but we still have human beings coming up to the angel calling them back to heaven, as it were, through the horn of the heavens being played out. And let's look at what Capricorn as the devil looks like in this deck. Again, just really classic depiction. I wouldn't say that this is like a super, it's on the same track as the Smith-Waite. This is a very classic look at this card. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this card in relationship to the Lovers, as a lot of us know this, is that the Lovers and the devil are actually pretty closely related. We can see that the devil and the Lovers really are kind of like the same people in different parts of their life. So we see Adam and Eve in the garden being cast out. We see the tree of knowledge with the snake, the classic interpretation as the devil as the serpent. You know, if you grew up in a religious household, you know the story. Christian religious household, I mean, you know the story. Eve eats the apple. They become aware of their nakedness, and because they broke the one fucking rule, they have to leave. So this is the interpretation of the Lovers in this deck. It's a little bit more dynamic, as I said. You just see a little bit more movement through both characters, though in the classic depiction, this is pretty dead on. And of course, we have the angel looking over. Reason why I like to look at these is because they almost are like the evolution of each other, right? We have the same people, but in a different set of circumstances. So this card is much earlier in the major spiral, and this one is later on, more trying time of the majors. And as I was taking out the cards for today and looking at them, I just found it interesting that this is the case. This is what we're seeing. This is the year of the Lovers, and numerology, if you believe in numerology or utilize that at all, we are in the year of the Lovers. So I just find it really fascinating that we're kind of going through this big shift with these planets. And we also have some representation in the tarot that, you know, I'm not quite sure what to make of it. I'm just observing it. But anyway, let's talk about it. So we've been talking a lot about, I'm already 6 minutes in. What am I talking about short? So we have this interpretation here, this the heavens being called upon. We have this card of very Plutonian, the rebirth process is happening in this card. And so if we're talking about Pluto and rebirth through judgment, what does Pluto and Capricorn look like? We're already talking about structure as it relates to second house. But what about, where does Capricorn sit in this? Pluto has been in Capricorn for a hot second. It's been a good second. But we're getting towards where, you know, where it was natally in the U.S.'s birth chart. And we've already kind of made some major hits, as it were. So how do these two things relate? Well, this is Capricorn, and Capricorn is here to remind us that there are structures that heal and structures that hinder. There are things that keep us in line and focused on our goals, and there are things that block us from believing in ourselves. And sometimes those things are not mutually exclusive. The Devil card reminds us that Capricorn is all about observing the structures in our lives and in our mind and bringing awareness to those things so we are getting the best bang for your buck, if you know what I mean. We don't want to live in a total place of restriction, but we have to create in the physical world. You can't just manifest something out of nothing. There has to be some action put towards it. So Capricorn reminds us that the physicality, the action is just as important as the intention itself. We can grow, we can take these chains, and I say this all the time, this is what I come back to. We can take the chains that have restricted us and melt them down to create the tools of our liberation. That is my big takeaway from this card. Again, the chains are right there. They are restricting these two people. The devil sits upon the throne as the one overlooking the humans. But remember, the devil was an angel too, who just had his own way of doing things. Lucifer just didn't like the rules. I'm just here to remind us that it's not all bad. The devil was an angel too. I don't know, whatever you want to make of that. So relating it to Capricorn and our judgment, our Pluto, what does this mean? So remember how I was talking about structures? in our financial systems, structure is something we have to really focus on. And when we're talking about chains that bind us, thinking about our financial structures and how they are really oppressive, suppressive, keeping us from really living in an alignment that feels good. So some of the things that come up around the devil card are the ideas of shame. Where is shame keeping you hostage? It's another thing I connect with the devil card. Think about it for a second. What are we ashamed of that we don't even want to talk about? Well, there's a lot that we don't want to talk about, if I'm being honest. We don't want to talk about our history of neglect towards the land that we are on, the genocide against the nations that were first here. We don't want to talk about not only the awful history of slavery, but then everything that followed after it with redlining and Jim Crow. There's so much denial, and that denial comes from shame. There is so much shame in our society right now. The Don't Say Gay bill, that's shame-oriented. You're shaming children from learning about themselves by saying that it's, what was the term that I saw? Grooming to learn about gay, even though 44 states allow for child marriage with no limit as how young they can marry. No. Talking about the existence of gay people is grooming. Let's be clear. This is a pro-LGBTQ plus account. So I will just announce that very quickly and say that that is an old stereotype, or not even stereotype. It's not a stereotype. It is an old form of fear and oppression of gay, trans, non-binary human beings. It's a shame tactic. Make people feel bad for who they are. Make women feel bad for needing abortions. Don't talk about the history of America, or you might make a white child feel shame. We have a lot of shame we don't want to deal with. So as a country, the devil and Capricorn, there's this conservative back and forth where it almost feels like our nation cannot face its own shame. It cannot face it because it's in denial of it happening. And the major thing that I want to get across here when we're talking about the devil is shame is the devil. Shame is not. Shame is a part of our human journey. We will all experience shame unless you're missing that part of your brain. And, there are different reasons for that. Trauma and developmental stages within in vitro. We can get into that another time. But there are areas of our brain that might not be activated, right? But for the most part, majority of us know shame very fucking well. And these can be the structures in which we are dictated, told what to do. This is part of why we don't learn certain history or why it's very whitewashed. There are structures of shame. And so structures of shame actually can connect back to our financial structures. Take credit scores, for example. That did not exist until the 1980s or 90s. I can't remember when exactly it started. But before the 1980s or 90s, there was no such thing as a credit score. That's a financial structure that creates shame around what you have or you don't have. Your lack of resources or your resources, right? So that might be one area that we are having to judge and rebirth. We are shifting our practices. It has to die. We have to begin again, right? So that's one thing I want to hone in on. With Capricorn, it's a lot of towing the line between what is expected, what is necessary for survival of a society, and what is actually harmful. What structures are actually so old-fashioned that they become backwards? The no, don't say gay bill seems a little backwards to me. The anti-trans laws happening in Texas, that's pretty fucking backwards to me, but it's very steeped in conservatism. And so with Capricorn, you know, I am a Capricorn, so I don't want to just label back and forth, but there is that towing the line between really what is necessary for society to survive and what is just conservative old ideology. It's old grandpa. Like, it's either wisdom or it's ignorance. So one of the things that might happen with this Pluto return is that we're having to really tackle where we are dealing with shame in our financial sectors. So when I talk about redlining, of course, you should Google that if you don't know what it is, and I won't get into it deeply. But basically, it was one of those structures that made it harder for Black Americans and just Americans of color to buy property and to acquire wealth, generational wealth, through investing in property and those sort of things, like starting business. Like, these are structures that were restrictive that still affect neighborhoods and families for generations. So as we are dealing with this Pluto return, we're talking about the life, death, rebirth process that comes with this card and the call to awakening that Pluto is asking of us. There becomes this question. And it's this: how do we acknowledge what has happened without sitting with shame, without projecting shame, but truly being accountable? Because here's the thing: shame, like white guilt, and that shame that you feel, that's like, that I've experienced myself as a white person, let me just say. That's only part of the journey. You don't stay there. You don't stop there. You have to keep going. You have to keep progressing through those stages of acceptance that, oh my gosh, the world I know is not the world I wish it was, which is loving and accepting of all of us. So that might be something to think about when we're thinking about Pluto and Capricorn in the second house. How have these structures been used and abused to harm people? Because that's going to tell us more, it's going to give us more insight into what needs to go in this rebirth process with Pluto. But with that said, I said these were going to be short. This one is like almost 20 minutes long. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Pluto and Capricorn, you bless me, you found it really good, you found some wisdom in it, help your girl out. Just hit the like, comment, subscribe button, ring that bell so you get notifications. I'm gonna get back to work, but in the meantime, friends, remember, pull out your tarot deck, do some journaling, connect with your cards. They are here as tools to support you. And until next time, check out the links in my description box down below. Click a video popping up around. I love you. Bye.